Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Seeing Beyond and Through with Monty. Well, a couple of days ago, actor Paul Rudd, 34 years old, been acting for decades now, was voted People magazine's sexiest man alive. And this particular accolade, or this particular voting, him to being the sexiest man alive, had some people bothered in the wrong way. And the people bothered in the wrong way about this acknowledgement. I'm going to specifically speak to black people because I just think that there are some things that we need to be very careful about. We need to be very careful about what triggers us, what causes us to protest, and what causes us to react. Certain things to me are very trivial, and we shouldn't allow that to get under our skin, such as something like this here. Now, Paul Rudd is an American actor in America, and in America, we as black people are the numerical minority. Caucasian people are the numerical majority. Now, some of you may not like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it and keep it real. White people have every right to celebrate, to prefer, to elevate, and to glorify their own. They have every right to do that. I don't see anything wrong with that. Isn't that a form of like self-acceptance and self-love? Why do we as black people tend to get this notion that somehow we deserve to be in white spaces when it comes to something so trivial as this here? Keep one thing in mind. Us not being chosen for a beauty standard or desirability standard says nothing about us. But I do think that when we start to protest this, speak out about it, and be critical of it, it says a lot about our insecurity. And insecurity would lead one to believe that somehow we deserve or have a right to be in white spaces. And by white spaces, I mean their mentality, their way of thinking of what they find beautiful, desirable, and attractive. And in most cases, it's not black people. But in most cases, that should be okay. Now, let me make this clear. I'm not going to generalize and say every single black person was. No. But when you go into black blogs and black spaces, it was enough. We don't need to start throwing in that there are other black men or black people who are more deserving of this or who look better than him. Why would we do that? I mean, we have to look at what we're asking in a way. And when we start doing things like that, we're kind of like begging and pleading. Pick me, or look at me. I'm beautiful. I'm attractive. I mean, ain't I just as good or desirable? Sometimes the best thing to do is to just sit back and be quiet. That's the more spiritual and mature thing to do. And allow them to have their enjoyment with who they find attractive. And this whole notion right here, I remember years ago when they were always choosing the sexiest man alive. They never had a black one. And black people protested so loudly that finally they chose Denzel. Denzel Washington was chosen as the sexiest man alive. I felt uncomfortable with that back then because I knew of the protests and the complaints and people raising their hands about why can't you get a black guy? So finally, People magazine bent over, acquiesced, and chose Denzel Washington. I just do not like the idea of black people having to raise their hands, having to protest, having to complain, having to bitch and moan about something as trivial as this. What it really boils down to is white acceptance and the dominant society deeming you to be attractive, deeming you to be as attractive on the level of their men or women. And that's something that we need to stop. Denzel Washington begat Idris Elba years later. It's almost like, to a degree, what they would do is give us like a consolation prize, so to speak, or throw us a bone. But is this really who they find attractive? Or are they trying to just shut us up? Now, this brings me back. This whole picking Paul Rudd as the sexiest man alive and people protesting, complaining. It brings me back earlier in the year. And do you guys remember this right here? Natasha Wagner, the 34-year-old Los Angeles model, who was deemed the world's sexiest butt. Let me give you a little playback as when Inside Edition did a little expose on this right here.
Size 6, has a 28-inch waist, and stands 5 feet 8 inches tall. Jean makers like Jennifer DeClark of the 7 for All Mankind brand says she uses Natasha's rear measurements as a secret weapon to creating the perfect fit.
She has mile-long legs. She's thin but curvy at the same time, and her hip-to-waist ratio is perfectly proportioned.
Natasha says it's not easy to stay the same size and shape.
My job is to go in, try on jeans, and stay the same size.
To achieve her perfect derriere, she sweats through 100 squats a day. She also spends 45 minutes on the treadmill and elliptical machine. She eats only healthy treats like this strawberry and kale smoothie. And check out this reward for staying in such great shape.
This is what you get for being the #1 fit model?
It's a closet filled with jeans to show off the best butt in America.
Let me tell you, when this came out earlier in the year, I can assure you that had a lot of black people triggered. This on black blogs had black people just going in on her butt size. The same thing that I had applied to Paul Rudd, it goes to her. So what? If this is who they deemed the perfect butt, the best butt in America, why are we protesting that? I mean, we can do our own. We can have our own. We can name our own as the best butt in America. We can elevate our own. See, once again, this goes into needing white acceptance and white validation and not feeling important unless you are acknowledged by white people. And having grown up around white people, I can assure you that most men and women, do not find the butt of Nicki Minaj to be desirable. They're not going to find the butt of a Serena Williams to be desirable. Yes, you do have a very small minority of white women who are getting implants like the Cocos, but that's going to be few and far between. The vast majority of white women do not want a butt like this. The vast majority of white men, I do not believe, find a butt like this attractive. The vast majority of white people who I grew up with did find this type of figure to be more so attractive than the Serenas or the Nicki Minaj's. Now it says the best butt in the business, meet of the model whose perfect size 6 derriere is used by the world's top denim brands to create an ideal fit for their jeans. So apparently they have an ideal look, an ideal fit for their genes in which they like to promote. That's okay. We shouldn't allow that to bother us. We shouldn't allow that to get into our heads. Because when we do, it says a great deal about us. It shows where we are at. And it's not a very secure place. It's not a very comfortable place if we're complaining about how another group finds people within their own group to have certain body parts or physical affectations to be the most beautiful or the most desirable in the world. So we need to be very careful about what we are protesting and what we are complaining about. Because many a times it doesn't make us look good. It doesn't make us look strong. It makes us look very weak and pathetic. I mean, there comes a time when we need to just mind our own business. And in cases like the Paul Rudds, the most attractive man, sexiest man alive, or Natasha Wagner, this would be a perfect time to mind our own business. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is another edition of Sin Beyond and Through with Monty, and I will see you all beyond and through.